the University of Notre Dame proudly presents its marching band, the Band of the Fighting Irish.
Welcome to another podcast of Talking Irish. Today we're going to be reviewing the Michigan game. We did that the other day on our blog and put some notes on there. But today we're going to go in a little bit more in depth on a couple things and also try to take a look at just some more of opinions supported hopefully by facts in terms of some of the games, and take a look at some of Kelly's comments in his post-game interview as well. To say the least, it was a disappointing evening for the Irish, and we would hope it would have been a better way to end, at least for now, the rivalry between the Michigan Wolverines and the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame. But just as the rivalry began over 100 years ago with the loss to Michigan, I guess for now we're going to have to end it with a loss to Michigan as well and move on. But before we move on, I think there's a lot of things that this team's going to have to take a look at in moving forward if they're going to make a run at a BCS Bowl. As the game started, it looked like Michigan was definitely better than advertised, definitely on the offensive side of the ball, if not the defensive side of the ball to a point as well. Devin Gardner was a true dual-threat quarterback, able to run the ball and throw the ball seemingly at will. His passing game was much better than I expected from the reviews and the highlights I had seen of him, and apparently a little bit better than Bob Diaco thought as well. Obviously, if you would have told me last week that we were going to score 30 points against Michigan, I would have been pretty confident in an Irish win with our defense averaging well under that last year in points given up per game during the regular season. I understand that we lost leader Manti Te'o and Cap at defensive end, but I just don't think we were going to miss them that much. And I don't think it was so much in the skill, but maybe in some of the on-field leadership, and we're still waiting for some of that to show up. And it just didn't happen, or maybe it happened too late. I will admit in that one of the last series on defense, Lewis Nix was playing like a man possessed, throwing people around. Unfortunately, it was much too little and obviously much too late. And we're going to need some on-the-field leadership on the defensive side of the ball in a big way, in a big hurry, if we're going to get back to the BCS. Initially, I came out of the game definitely, I don't want to say blaming the defense, but definitely holding them accountable for this loss. I didn't think we were going to ask much more out of the offense and Tommy Rees than 30 points. However, in Michigan's post-game interview, Brian Kelly really seemed to, I don't want to say accuse or hold the offense accountable for the loss, but he definitely made it clear that they needed to step up and carry the team in this game. Obviously, it seemed like every game was being bailed out by the defense last year, and maybe it is a little much to expect that every single game, every single year, but I don't think holding a team under 30 points is too much to expect. But without a shadow of a doubt, Brian Kelly definitely felt that the offense was just as accountable, if not more. He seemed to think that we missed a number of key plays and a couple of opportunities, which I wouldn't necessarily disagree on in terms of offense, but the Irish were 3 for 5 in the red zone, which is better than they had been last year, although Michigan responded by being perfect, 4 for 4 for red zone touchdowns. I just think our defense bet too much and definitely broke. Could our offense had made more plays at more meaningful times? Absolutely. Did Tommy Rees have 2 touchdowns? Absolutely. Were they all his fault? Hard to say. I think he forced some throws, but I really don't think that's necessarily what cost us the game. Obviously, in reviewing the game afterwards, there were definitely some bright spots, offensively and to a point defensively. Looking at the defense, they gave up a lot of points in 41, but they also gave up 460 yards to the Wolverines, which is quite a bit for a team that really, was good at stopping the rush and stopping long plays, and that just didn't happen on Saturday. They obviously had a chance to win it, being down by 4 points with 9:15 to play, but just weren't able to make some of the great plays that we made last year and had some of the timely stops that have happened in the past. But that's not much you can do about that. And Brian Kelly even said, we don't coach penalties, and there were some penalties late in the game on third downs against the Irish that one I thought was totally ludicrous. And the other one probably could have gone either way, but if you win by 40, you don't worry about each and every pass interference call on third down. Looking at the offense, I think Tommy did well. He had another 300-yard gain. He seemed to control the offense fairly well. The one thing I really will harp on, and probably several times during this podcast, is I think Amir Carlisle is definitely our starting running back. He showed me a lot more. George Atkinson is a good back, potentially a great back, and continues to show a glimpse of greatness, but it's just not as consistent as I'd like to see. And for some reason, it's just something special, some kind of flash that I see in Carlisle that I'd like to see more of. I'd like him to be the starter, I'd like him to be the lead back. And Cam McDaniel's got to touch the ball more. One carry for 4 yards is not going to do it. It's not going to keep our backs fresh. It's not going to keep the defense on their toes. And they may understand with certain backs in the backfield what play is coming, but in the lead up to the Michigan preview podcast was Lou Holtz's locker room speech, and he basically says you want to go toe to toe, let people see you and try to stop you, and that's what we did not do. Overall, I guess thinking that the Irish are going to go undefeated again into the national championship game may be a bit much to ask. However, I don't think it was out of the question. Definitely a loss may put things in perspective, may give the coaches and the players an opportunity to reflect and refocus and move forward. Fortunately, with Purdue coming in next week, it's going to be a little bit better of an opponent to kind of refocus and get back on the winning ways. Not that I'm 100% guaranteeing a win, but I would think it's a safe bet if you're going to go out to Vegas. But definitely a loss is better earlier in the season. There's in terms of pollsters, if you're into that, losing to a 17th ranked Michigan is better than losing to an unranked team or even a ranked team later in the season. So realistically, there's an opportunity for some regrouping both by the coaching staff and the players, and refocus and get back on the winning ways and continue that throughout the season. So when other big challenges come up in Stanford, Oklahoma, that we're better prepared and we're able to have a better game plan and execution to get those victories. Now, before we continue, I definitely want to reiterate the impressive gameplay I saw out of Michigan and Devin Gardner. I don't want to take anything away from them. They're a fine team, and I would hope most people think Notre Dame's a fine team and that they played as good as they should have, which we both all know that is not the case. Again, Devin Gardner was just outstanding. I think Kelly definitely recognized that after the game. There didn't seem to be a real solid answer to him. We did seem to give him some hurries, and he seemed to be knocked down quite a bit, but I will give him credit for bouncing back. There were times Stephon Tuitt was chasing him down that I think maybe if we'd have gotten to him a little bit sooner here and there, we may have rattled him more or caused a turnover one way or the other, but it just didn't happen on Saturday night. Troy Nicholas was another, I'll use the term, bright spot for the Irish on Saturday. His second straight week with a touchdown pass, and he just looks like a man-child out there after he gets the ball. It's tough. He's not an easy down once he gets hit. He doesn't get hit and go down on first contact, so I'm hoping to see more from him. He did have 6 receptions for 76 yards. TJ Jones had a decent game. He had 9 receptions for 94 yards and a touchdown. The receiving game is definitely coming along. Similar to Amir Carlisle getting more time as the starting running back, I'd like to see Davaris Daniels definitely play more. I really like what I see with him. I'd like to see him get more passes his way as well. Brian Kelly did confirm, or at least said it in the press conference after the game, that Chuck Martin is still calling all the plays and that Brian Kelly was not jumping into that. I'm not sure that's 100% accurate, but for now we'll have to go with that. But I would like to see Amir get more runs, and I'd like to see Davaris get more passes. I think that would definitely improve our numbers in the offensive points column. Another bright note was Kyle Brenza, who I know has a very strong leg, and he started finally kicking some kickoffs to the end zone, which he could actually do his freshman year. Started getting a little bit more accurate on his field goal attempts. He made 3 field goals from 44, 24, and 40 yards on his field goals, and his accuracy got a lot better. He's got a little bit of a hook to it that when it comes off his foot, you start thinking it's going to go wide, but he has been true for his last 3 field goals. and he's also handling the punting duties where he averaged 40 yards on 2 punts. So I'm pretty happy with his progression, and I would feel comfortable in closing seconds of a game if we needed a 40-plus yard field goal to win a game, that he would be the man to get it done. Overall, it'll be very interesting to see how the Irish players respond to this loss. It's their first regular season loss since the final game of 2 seasons ago against Stanford, so it's not like it's been a 4-year undefeated streak, but at the same time, this team needs to refocus and be able to bounce back. And from what I've seen in some Twitter chatter, if you will, from the players, they seem to take the loss seriously, but keep it in perspective and plan to get back to work on focusing on their next win. Kelly has pretty much a 24-hour policy in terms of if you win, you got 24 hours to celebrate, and if you lose, you have 24 hours to get past that. So I would think when they get back to work this week, it will be business as usual, working on any of their mental mistakes and working on their execution as they look forward to Purdue, which, again, a lot of people don't realize that's a rivalry in of itself. Being an in-state rivalry does mean a lot to this team and a lot of the kids that play for both schools that are from Indiana. Jalen Smith being one of them, outside linebacker, playing as a true freshman. Overall, I have been trying to figure out, is this loss more on the coaching staff or the players? I think the game plan was relatively solid. Execution at times was very good, but again, I think there are some plays that it didn't quite understand, and definitely some penalties that shouldn't have happened, and some plays that should have turned out better than they did, and I would again put that back on the players. So it's going to be a true team effort to refocus on that, and I can't see this team being a bunch of finger pointers anyway, but they're going to have to come together as a team to fix these issues. It can't just be a coaching change. It can't just be a player switch. It's going to have to be a little bit of everybody. Now, I look next week to really be an opportunity for the Irish players to literally dust themselves off, get out, and look to punch somebody in the mouth. Again, there's no shame necessarily in losing to a 17th-ranked Michigan team that seemed to play very, very well, but I think there were some embarrassing moments, especially for that defensive side of the ball, that they're going to want to come out and say, you know what, we're better than this, and really prove that. And it doesn't matter if they're playing who they're playing next week. The fact that it's a Purdue team or an Alabama team, it doesn't matter. They need to come out and I think send a message, not necessarily to the country, but to themselves. So I'm hoping to see some fired up kids next week, and whether it be on the offense or defensive side of the ball. Only part of the team that I felt really played solid all around, for the most part, was the offensive line. I was really impressed by their play, and I would expect them not to have a lot of changes. Could they continue to improve? Yes, but I would think, besides them, everyone else, to me, has something to prove and show that they're not too far off a track, because with it's not like the NFL where you can get in the playoffs and see what happens. You really have to prove yourself during the regular season, week in and week out, and it just didn't happen on Saturday. I expect the defensive line to be more physical, and again, Lewis Nix towards the end of that game was just manhandling people, but again, too little, too late. So up front, I'm feeling kind of confident about that. Stephon Tuitt obviously was chasing down Gardner every day. Just you're not going to catch him every time, and nice hustle on the interception. Sheldon Day seemed to be popping in and out from tackle to end, and I expected that with his stoutness, but I'm not worried about the front three. The linebacking crew, again, the pass coverage piece was an issue in even the first game. They're going to have to continue to improve, but the defensive secondary, if I had to point my finger at one area, it would be them. I mean, I know Bennett Jackson had an interception, but him and Kavari Russell, I think, were, in a sense, embarrassing. They didn't play that poorly at all last year, and with a year under the belt, I expected to be a little bit better, especially since they already had a game under the belt. I could see maybe needing to knock some rust off, and they should have done that against Temple, but it just didn't happen in that defensive backfield, and I don't know if they need to move some people around, or if this is a coaching issue. That I'm not really sure at this point. But the one thing I am sure of, the defensive backfield, I wouldn't say it's a crisis situation or it's a liability, but it's definitely one of the weaker links on the team. Coming into this game, I expected wide receiver Jeremy Gallen to have a good game. He seemed to be one of their better players, but boy, he seemed to dominate our defensive backfield and really kind of do what he wanted, and he's not the best receiver we're going to see all season, that's for sure. And I wouldn't say Gardner's necessarily the best quarterback we're going to see all season. They're definitely up there, and they're probably going to get better, but Gallen definitely owned our defensive backfield. Switching back to the discussion of the offensive line, that again I think played pretty darn well against a fair defensive line for Michigan. Steve Elmer, true freshman, became 23rd, 11th freshman out of the 23 to see action this year. It was a matter of time. I don't like burning freshman eligibility, but this kid is good, and he seems to be too deep in a couple positions. He did jump in for Chris Watt at one point when his helmet came off, but he looks like he is number 2 on both tackle and guard positions, so I'd expect him to play a little bit more this year, and which excites me because I like the way this kid plays. I watched a lot of highlight film and just watched this kid talk in high school, and he's definitely the future of the Irish leadership on that offensive line. He was the first commit of his class as well and helped recruit a lot of other kids to this team. Getting ready to give some of my final thoughts, I did really enjoy the fact that the Irish got to be part of a record-setting night, and where the NCAA record was set for a football game of 115,000 plus. Actually, it was 115,109 in one stadium, and that just blows my mind. So this was not just an opportunity to play in front of a national audience on primetime Saturday night, but in front of a record crowd as well. And I in no way think that was any kind of intimidation factor. I think our kids are pretty well versed for that, especially anybody coming back, in the sense that, for crying out loud, he opened up in Ireland last year, traveling overseas, and were followed by 35,000 American fans. I don't think that was an issue, but I definitely think that was a great experience for them. It just would have been nice if they had come out with a victory. So basically, the Irish are 1-1. They are still ranked in the top 25, and are moving on to Purdue, which I would think would be a win, and hopefully a very definitive win for this team that has some things to prove, in my opinion. And we'll be back later this week with a preview of Purdue. Until then, keep a positive mind. Make sure you're liking us on Facebook or following us on Twitter. Until then, go Irish.